Hello and welcome to Weekly MTG. I'm your host, Blake Rasmussen, fresh off a long weekend and ready to dive in with energy to one of the commander decks. That wasn't my best opening.
It was okay.
But, anyway, I'm here with Reggie Valk, who was one of the leads on the Modern Horizons 3 commander decks. And so today we are going to reveal the Creative Energy deck, which is a deck focused all around energy. So we're going to talk about the whole deck, the whole thing, start to finish. We're going to talk about the new cards. We're going to talk about the reprints. We're going to talk about design stories behind them, and that's what we're going to spend the whole show doing. Almost the whole show. Before we get to that, we do have one set of main set Modern Horizons 3 previews. It's a cycle of common mana fixing. So these are from the Terramorphic Expanse school of fetching lands, but better, because they can tap for colorless when they come into play right away. You can even leave them in play. If you're playing some Eldrazi, you might just want that colorless mana. Or they can tap and sacrifice to search for one of 3 different land types. Or if you don't need any of that, they cycle away for 3 colored mana as well. So pretty good common mana fixing here. That's going to be the core of a lot of Modern Horizons 3 draft decks.
And notably, being able to make colorless mana is actually more relevant than you think, especially in the limited format.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, where you're casting some Eldrazi that need these. So Eldrazi players, keep your eyes out for these. All right, but we're going to spend the rest of this show going over Creative Energy. So let's throw up the product shot, and then Reggie, why don't you tell us kind of the overall theme of this deck and how you landed here?
For sure. So in typical set-affiliated commander releases, we usually try to get some of the decks to hook into the main set themes. So, you know, for OTJ, we saw there was a desert deck and a criminal deck that, you know, hit those themes, or outlaw deck, I should say. And, you know, MKM, same deal. There was like a clue deck, and there was a face-down deck. And so we wanted to kind of look outside the box and embrace some of the weirdness of Modern Horizons and kind of things that we couldn't normally do. But we also wanted to still stay affiliated with Modern Horizons 3, and 2 of the biggest themes there were Eldrazi and energy. And so that was a big influence for why we landed on those themes here. And yeah, there were a lot of different ways that you can go, just because, you know, energy doesn't really tell you what to do with it. You know, it's all card by card how you're going to spend it. And so we really wanted to make sure that we delivered on some of that kind of Jenny-Johnny gameplay of building crazy engines and getting to do powerful things and kind of dawdle around, take 10 minutes on your turn. But we didn't want too much of that at the same time. So the deck actually plays pretty aggressively a lot of the time. It's kind of the driver in the ecosystem of attacking, making a lot of copies, and kind of putting pedal to the metal a lot of the time, using your energy for aggressive payoff.
Okay. So in that vein, we just released the Fallout Commander deck that was also
and I worked on those products.
So what work did you do to differentiate the 2 decks?
Yeah, well, for starters, we don't get to include Liberty Prime, which is a big loss. But no, that was one of the things that I was able to bring as being on both teams. The Jeskai deck in Fallout ended up focusing a lot more on artifacts and was kind of an artifact deck first and almost an energy deck second in how it was constructed. And obviously it still had to, you know, pay a lot of, had a lot of cards that didn't necessarily support the energy theme directly, but we wanted to include them because they were, you know, popular scientists or, you know, mechs or things like that. This deck got to lean a lot more into all the energy. So we got to, you know, go back and use a lot of old energy cards that we couldn't reprint in Fallout because they didn't make sense for the IP. We got to make a bunch of more new energy cards that get to support the deck theme in a novel way, and giving it that kind of aggressive energy, kind of aggro bend, as opposed to the artifact one. ended up differentiating it a lot. So I think you'll find they play pretty differently, but hopefully if you bought one already, you could add in some cool upgrades.
All right, well, let's take a look at some of those upgrades. We're going to start with the face card, Satya, Aether Flux Genius. So tell us about Satya here and how Satya was created.
Yeah, so Satya went through a bunch of different iterations. He's actually the genius behind the Aether Flux Reservoir, a popular card that people will be familiar with. And he really tells you what the deck's all about. So we ended up making it so that he's a really aggressive body. He's a very good attacker. 3/5 Menace Haste is hard to deal with. And then having an attack trigger that gets to copy and make another attacking body really tells you that you want to get in there with your creatures as much as you can. And yeah, just attack with sweet things, usually aggressive creatures that also have good enters the battlefield abilities, but you want to play with other cards that incentivize or pay off attacking and just kind of causing some mayhem, but also getting some sweet value, which is something that aggressive decks can't always do. It's what's nice, it kind of plays out very much in the red-white style, but getting card advantage and card flow from the blue side of the equation. So you could still copy, a Muldrifter or something if you wanted to.
I absolutely want to.
Good value, yeah.
All right, so the backup commander is Kith. Let's see Kith here. Famed Mechanist. So Kith here works off fabricate, populate, proliferate, bunch of different keyword soup here.
That's right.
What's going on with Kith?
So this is straight out of the brain of Henry Davis, who was primarily a UX designer, but got to work on a couple of different Commander products for a little while. You already saw his work on MKM's Deep Clue C deck, and this deck was mostly his baby, so shout out to Henry for sure. And so he had come up with this card. It was Kate, Freight Magnate, Fabricate, Populate, Proliferate, and just from Notepad. And we were all really charmed by it. It got a little bit of iteration here and there in exactly how the Fabricate ended up coming to be, and the name ended up changing a little bit. But yeah, we just decided that this was a wacky, weird combination of, lots of different keywords, very much kind of in the vein of what Modern Horizons is always trying to do, mash things up in a strange, fun way. And yeah, it tells you to do similar things. You're still often, going wide. The deck is making lots of tokens. Obviously, Satya can make tokens that you can keep around, which are often really exciting copies to populate if you're trying to. And then Proliferate obviously works really well with both the Fabricate creatures and the energy mechanic. You get to proliferate yourself and get more energy.
That makes sense. Yeah, it's cool how this doesn't look like an energy card, but everything you just described, are different ways that it interacts with the lead commander. All right, now we're going to start running through the new cards in the deck. So each deck, if you aren't aware, is made up of a series of new cards that are created just for this product, and then a number of reprints. And the reprints, we're going to get to the reprints. The reprints are sweet. There's some spice in there, so definitely don't tune out when we get to the reprints. But first, let's take a look at the new cards. So first we've got Hourglass of the Lost. So 2 and a white, tap to add a white and put a time counter on Hourglass of the Lost. So right off the bat, 3 mana rock. 3 mana rock, there we go. And then you can tap and remove X time counters from it and exile it to return each non-land permanent card with mana value X from your graveyard to the battlefield. Activate only as a sorcery. All right, what's going on here with Hourglass of the Lost?
Kind of a one-off. This is a space that we've enjoyed playing in a lot for commander designs of 3 mana rock with big upside.
Yeah.
And yeah, I had come up with this one almost jokingly as kind of the anti-ratchet bomb of something that can build up charge counters over time and then get things back, which I thought was fun, was something that you could proliferate to maybe advance the game plan of faster with something like Kith. And yeah, went through a couple of different iterations. I am charmed. One of the last things that happened was it changed from a charge counter to a time counter. So if you've got your Doctor Who commander decks ready, you can time travel this thing.
Nice.
But yeah, just good value to recur because, like I was saying, this deck is often attacking pretty aggressively. So
Yeah.
you're often willing to trade off your creatures, and this is another source that can, make that worthwhile because you know you can bring them back later.
All right, very cool. All right, and next card up is called Localized Destruction. So 3 white and a white for a sorcery. You get an energy, then you may pay 1 or more energy. If you do, each creature you control with power equal to the amount of energy paid this way gains indestructible until end of turn, and then destroy all creatures. Seems like a pretty good payoff for an energy deck.
We hope so. Yeah, every deck needs some sweepers. It's just a commander necessity, and we were thinking about cool ways to incorporate energy. This one also went through a couple of different iterations, but we ended up landing on something that is pretty sweet. I think it's most powerful probably with tokens. If you do have a lot of servos or something like that, or copies of one specific creature left around, then you really have your target to plan around of, I'm going to spend that much energy.
Yeah.
And obviously big payoff, one-sided board sweeper if you could get it to work. But in a pinch, it's just, a 5-mana Wrath too. I think it's doing some good work.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll call out a couple things for people to notice here. One, you have to pay energy to get the indestructible thing. You cannot pay 0. And then also it's based on power. First time I read this, I thought casting cost.
Mana value,
Yeah, mana value. So yeah, it's based on power, but very cool sweeper there. All right, next up we have Razorfield Ripper. This is a white artifact creature equipment rhino. Great
Seen it
type
before.
line. Great type line, yep. When Razorfield Ripper or the equipped creature attacks, you get an energy. Then it gets +X/+X until end of turn, where X is the amount of energy you have. That doesn't seem like a line we see very often.
No, it was not something, and not something you see very often. And then lastly, a reconfigure cost. Pay 2 or 3 energy.
Yeah.
So you get some modularity there. Yeah, this is kind of a weirdo. It's also sort of a success. Mark Rosewater has often talked about how he originally came up with the energy mechanic back when he was working on Mirrodin, and now we actually get to see a Mirrodin set creature with energy.
Yeah.
So that's kind of fun, full circle. But yeah, we were just experimenting. Obviously, the main set and us were both, scraping to try to figure out what's something cool that we can do with energy now that we're using it again. And yeah, this is a space that we didn't go to too often, but wanted a little bit of novel tension in what if you just want to bank all your energy for something crazy? You're like saving it up for a really big activation. Is there something sweet we could do with that? And so, obviously, this still is a functional fine Magic card. If you're not trying to bank all your energy, it still is a good attacker. But if you do save it up, it can really punch through with a ton of damage.
Yeah. Yeah, and chat's calling out that Mirrodin died. There's some nuance to that, but yeah, like one of the cool things about what Modern Horizons can do is we can pull things from any point in time in Magic's history. So, yeah, even though Mirrodin is not dead, but different, we'll say. Different. We can still pull cool stuff like this. All right, next, let's take a look at Salvation Colossus. 6, a white and a white for an artifact creature construct. That's a 9/9. It's got flying, it's got vigilance, it's got trample, and it's got, whenever you attack, other creatures you control get +2/+2 and gain indestructible till end of turn. And if you're wondering where the energy part comes in, there it is with the unearth cost. Pay 8 energy. Also a unique text line.
That's true. You'll see a lot of unique text lines, I imagine. Yeah, we decided that we wanted just a big, awesome robot. I think that was what this had started out as. I think this was also originally Henry's brainchild, and just decided that, what do we want it to do? We want it to be huge, flying, and somehow pump your team in some way to support that kind of go wide aggressive game plan, be just awesome top end, you know, in the vein of, you know, a Moonshaker Cavalry or a Crater Hoof or something like that. And yeah, went through a bunch of different iterations on exactly what the right shape for that was. For a little while, I think this had its own attack trigger. For a little while, I think it was maybe an enters the battlefield and an attack.
Yep.
But then we were always kind of trying to figure out exactly how and why we could support the energy. For a little while, it wasn't unearth. It was just like a pay energy to return it to the battlefield, full stop. So it was something that you could recur. But then we kind of, it all came together with, oh, what if it's a sweet attack trigger and we get to use unearth as something really spicy? And so you could, you know, maybe build a game plan around discarding this and trying to bring it back cheap.
Yep.
And yeah, I'm excited. I think that this is super sweet. Excited to see what it can do.
Yeah, yeah, and again, in the world of new cards, it says whenever you attack, not whenever this creature attacks.
It's true. So if you play it for 8 mana fairly, then you still get some sweet value the turn it comes down without needing to be an enters the battlefield. But obviously, if you unearthed it, it's probably doing the attacking.
It is probably doing the attacking with the Flying Vigilance Trample 9/9. All right, next let's move on to Silverquill Lecturer, something a little smaller, but no less interesting. So pretty simple text line here that does quite a bit. So 4 and a white for a 3/3 core wizard, but that's not the important part. The important part is creature spells you cast have demonstrate. That's sort of wild.
It is sort of wild. So this has been space that we've been dabbling in more, giving, you know, white some kind of group hug adjacent things in this style, and something we've been a little more comfortable with lately of allowing you to make token copies of permanents a little more. And yeah, this was something that had started, so Glenn Jones had led the vision design for this product, and one of the things that he was thinking about when we were starting was, how do we differentiate this commander set from other commander sets? Because one of the things that we know and love about the Modern Horizons main sets is that they get to, you know, revisit and use all sorts of old wacky keywords. We get to do that all the time in commander sets.
Yeah.
We're often, you know, revisiting and just doing one-offs because it's fun. So one of the things that we had thought about was, what if we try and revisit as many old commander keywords as we can?
Yeah.
And we did incorporate quite a lot, as you'll see. I'm not sure if we got all of them, but that was a goal for a little while. And so this had come from that of, what's a demonstrate card we can do? Is it supposed to still just have demonstrate, or can we do something cooler with it? And we landed on this, and yeah, it's a sweet read. I'm excited to see what people can do.
All right. Cast Phage. I think if you cast Phage, you die?
I think so.
Yeah, because you also create a copy. I don't know how the stack works. We can figure it out. Chat will correct me in a second. All right. Next, let's take a look at Aurora Shifter. So 1 and a blue for a creature, shapeshifter, appropriate. It's a 1/3, and whenever Aurora Shifter deals combat damage to a player, you get that many energy. Usually 1, could be more. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may pay 2 energy. When you do, Aurora Shifter becomes a copy of another target creature you control, except that it has this ability and that first ability as well. So yeah, obviously you're looking to get a little bit more than 1 energy out of this.
Hopefully, yeah. You know, we were looking for a couple of different designs that could help get the ball rolling early, you know, get some energy, promote you again to attack and be a little aggressive in what you're doing. And yeah, just like that first line, we thought was really cool of, who knows how much energy you could get just by, you know, pumping this or shooting it up, and then the dream of getting to clone something awesome, you know, clone your 9/9 Flying Trampler or whatever. They're big dreams you can do, so.
All right, very cool. Next up, let's see Aether Refinery for a red and a red. That art looks like serious business, so you know the text box is gonna be. If you would get 1 or more energy, you get twice that many energy instead. Yep, That is serious business. And then tap, you get an energy, which will secretly be 2. Then you may pay 1 or more energy. If you do, create an XX black Aetherborn creature token where X is the amount of energy paid this way. This seems like pretty key to any red energy deck.
It's spicy. Yeah, this was something that somebody had thought of. Yeah. What if it's an energy doubler? And we were excited to roll with it. For a while, we did different versions. I feel like this actually had like downside text at one point of like, it required you to spend all your energy at the end of the turn to make the Aetherborn, and that was like the trade-off of it was cheaper and you like could maybe set up a crazy wild engine, but you couldn't bank your energy turn over turn. But we ended up thinking that the most fun version was a more expensive card that just let you do the sweet thing and do whatever you wanted to do. But obviously, if you still want to, play in the spirit of that old design, you can spend all your energy every turn and make huge Aetherborn.
Yeah.
And I love the flavor of this card. This is a sweet one. A little weird maybe to see a black creature token getting made in this, Jeskai energy deck, but this is very true to the story of how Aetherborn are created in world, kind of a byproduct of Aether Refinery. And so.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing, that this one tells a really cool story that's just intrinsic to how Aether refining works.
Yeah.
Which is something I definitely thought I'd talk about in my life. How does Aether refining work? Next up, we have Blaster Hulk. Blaster Hulk, go boom. 6 red for an artifact creature pirate. It's an 8/8. But this spell costs 1 less to cast for each energy you've paid or lost this turn. And it has haste. And whenever Blaster Hulk attacks, you get 2 energy. Then you may pay 8 energy. When you do, Blaster Hulk deals 8 damage divided as you choose among up to 8 targets. A lot of 8s on this Blaster Hulk here.
That's for sure. Sweet card. This was similar to the Rhino that we had seen of, I think at a time this was maybe incentivizing you to bank more energy, and then we kind of arrived at a version that instead was rewarding you for having used a lot of energy in one turn. So actually quite good with that Aether Refinery we just saw, both because it lets you make a lot of energy, but also as a free way to spend as much energy as you can. And yeah, just a big pirate with a big gun. That's
sometimes an 8/8 for 2 mana.
If
with
you
haste.
dream big.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, I also want to call it, and I know you're not part of the templating team or anything like that, but big quality of life upgrade that we get pay the word 8 energy rather than 8 energy symbols.
Yeah. There's something charming about having to read all of them, but
and sit there and like count them out individually.
That's right.
Yeah, I think this
Good
is
quality
better.
here.
This works great. Thanks, templating team. All right, next up we have Filigree Racer. Filigree Racer is a vehicle for 3 and a red. It's a 5/5 when it's active. When Filigree Racer enters the battlefield, you get 4 energy. When Filigree Racer attacks, you may pay 2 energy. When you do, target instant or sorcery card in your graveyard gains jump start until end of turn. That's a pretty clever line of text right there.
Isn't it? This was another one that was one of Henry's brainchilds. Really charming idea of just, what if we made a car with jumpstart?
Yeah.
And we just rolled with it. For a little while, we were actually trying some pretty weird versions that had this permanent having jumpstart.
Okay.
But ended up being some kind of weird stuff under the hood when we tried to actually
Under the hood.
give.
Good.
Thank you.
Well done.
Trying to give the permanent jumpstart itself, and so we ended up kind of taking a step back and trying to say, all right, what if this is just a car that has the word jumpstart on it? Where do we go from there? And we ended up arriving at this kind of flashback space.
Yeah.
So.
Yep. Still super clever. Still super fun.
Yep. And still, even though you're definitely a creature deck first and foremost, still definitely some good spells in the deck. Removal spells or card draw.
Yep. Yeah, and getting back to the Commander Satya, this is another one of those great attackers that is fun to copy, and you get that 4 energy.
For sure.
When it enters the battlefield. All right, Next up, let's see Overclocked Electromancer. Overclocked Electromancer. 2 and a red for a 2/2 Lizard Wizard.
Notably not a Viashino anymore.
Yeah, not a Viashino. That would be easier to say. This card is a tongue twister from top to bottom. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you may pay 3 energy. If you do, put a +1/+1 counter on Overclocked Electromancer. Whenever Overclocked Electromancer attacks, double its power until end turn. And when Overclocked Electromancer deals combat damage to a creature, if that creature was dealt excess damage this turn, you get more energy equal to the excess damage.
That's right.
Yeah, so tell us about this Lizard Wizard.
Kind of a mouthful, but it promises to do some spicy things. The energy for the 1/1 counter is not a very good rate. Obviously, we've seen that a couple of times, but it's effectively 2 1/1 counters just because it is doubling its power so frequently, and I've seen this do some crazy things. You can innocuously attack for, 8 on turn 4 without trying too hard, and then your opponent's in a real tough question of, am I supposed to chump block with something and then give them 7 energy, or am I supposed to take it on the chin?
Yeah.
And so this keeps the game moving, keeps things attacking, another strong one to, just copy and get in with.
Yeah.
And yeah, a Lizard Wizard.
A Lizard Wizard. It's fun to say. It's fun to play with.
Hopefully.
Hopefully. Moving on to the next card, Sphinx of the Revelation. Those words sound familiar in a different order. 3, a white and a blue for an artifact creature Sphinx. It's got flying, it's got lifelink. Whenever you gain life, you get that many energy. And for white, blue, and blue, tap, pay X energy, draw X cards. I love everything about this card.
I'm a big fan too. The deck isn't necessarily a life gain deck per se, but we decided that, something that we were thinking about, especially with very narrow themes like we decided on, things like Eldrazi and energy, was how do we make cool cards that, can go into more commander decks, because not everybody has an energy deck lying around.
Right.
And so one of the ways that we were approaching that, or, just thinking about sweet things to do, and so we know I'm a life gain person.
Me too.
And so I had thought of this line and kind of made a shape that had a high floor. So, this as a lifelink creature can attack to create its own energy and is just a really strong payoff for your deck that otherwise is creating a ton of energy.
Yep.
And I'm really excited to see if this can, go into dedicated life gain shells around it. So spicy one, obviously calling back to Sphinx's Revelation, and it's just a cool card.
Yeah. I also like it's got some synergy with the main set Soul Warden Energy Creator.
For sure.
Name escapes me off the top of my head, but I'm sure chat will correct me soon enough. All right. Next, let's move on to Conversion Apparatus. 3 mana for an artifact that lets you tap for a colorless. So this is another one of those 3 mana rocks with abilities. 3 and tap it, you get 3 energy. Tap and pay 3 energy. Add 3 mana in any combination of colors. Fun little doohickey here.
Yeah, this was one that I think was right off the notepad from Eric Engelhardt, another designer who was on the team and did great work. Spicier, I would say, in a different way than the other 3 mana rock we saw.
Yeah.
So similar base case of just adding mana, but a 3 mana rock that could potentially add 3 mana is big game. Obviously, pretty challenging to set that up. You're going to need to, create energy, maybe on turns 1 and 2, or on turn 4, but huge payoff if you can make it work, and just kind of good value of being something that you can kind of use as a storage land. So.
Yeah, because you can just, even if your energy machine is not humming, you can tap it to get 3 energy, save that for the next turn, and then go off from there.
That's right.
All right, very cool. And our final new card, Stone Idol Generator. So 5 mana for an artifact with some sweet art right there. And then whenever a creature you control attacks, you get an energy. Pretty simple. And then tap and pay 6 energy. Create a 6/12 colorless construct artifact creature token with trample. Activate only as a sorcery. So tell us a bit about this card and where the name and creature type came from.
We've gotten good use out of this colorless construct token. For such a strange one, the 6/12, it's shown up in a couple of different commander sets now in a couple of different designs. And something that we often do is, try and come up with designs that can reuse tokens that we already have. And so in this case, it was kind of taken to the extreme of, well, what if we try to come up with some crazy engine that can create this token? What does this mean? And I don't even understand the lore implications here of a crazy underground Zendikar energy generator. But this was something that we had made kind of trying to be in the same style as cards like Aetherworks Marvel or Conti's Aether Heart, of big artifact that sits on the battlefield, generates energy turn over turn through some static ability, and then has a big tap activation to spend all your energy. And so we've seen a couple of different iterations of that, and this one we decided on was, supporting the theme of the deck of attacking and getting to make a huge token as the payoff.
To do more attacking
Hopes.
and maybe proliferate the 6/12 token.
That's powerful.
There's your challenge, chat. Who can make the most 6/12 colorless construct artifact tokens? All right, that covers it for the new cards. But as I said earlier, we've got some spicy reprints in the reprint section. We're going to take them by card type. Appropriately enough, we're going to start with artifacts. We just talked about a big artifact payoff. Let's see some more big artifact payoffs, as well as some of those mana rocks. Hiding in here, I want to call out a couple all-stars here. Gonti's Aether Heart fits the bill for the big artifacts that have energy payoffs, and Aetherworks Marvel.
Right, those were the other two that I was just calling out of, spicy ones. So for a little while, we had tried to, position that Stone Idol generator as the middle child of the two.
Sure, yeah.
So Marvel's a 4-mana card, Aether Heart's a 6, and trying to make a 5 and vary up the energy costs. But yeah, again, just spicy, huge sinks for all your energy.
Yeah. So talk about the selection of this suite of artifacts. Obviously, you've got some energy generators, you've got some mana rocks, and, the coveted jewel in there. What are you going for here?
Yeah, just a mix. So pretty much every deck in Commander needs a good amount of mana ramp. It's just kind of a necessity when you're playing Jeskai. It's basically got to come from artifacts, not coming from anywhere else. And so that's where most of the talismans and the Coalition Relic and Arcane Signet are coming from. And then for other things, called out the spicy energy generators, Decoction Module and Aethersphere Harvester, kind of middle ground there of things that you can use your energy on, but a little kind of more mid-game sized. And then Biden Athasa and Coveted Jewel are both telling you to attack, in different ways. They're both providing card flow, but also just, big impetus to keep the ball rolling and keep attacking players turn over turn.
Yep. And you've got Decoction Module in there. So of the 3 modules, how'd you pick this one?
I think this one just ended up kind of working the nicest with the game plan of the deck. We don't have quite enough 1/1 counters to support. I think Animation Module is the 1-mana one. And then the 3-mana module is frankly a little just too clunky. This was just kind of in the Goldilocks zone of just right.
All right. Next up, let's take a look at some creatures. There's some good ones in here too. I'm going to highlight that Goldspan Dragon right there. We got some Professional Facebreaker hiding in that row second from the right, and then a bunch of good energy creatures here.
For sure. So yeah, that's really the mix, is creatures that have sweet attack triggers or enters triggers, or creatures that are making a ton of energy. And those often actually overlap.
Yeah.
And this was something that, we didn't get to do, again, in the Fallout energy deck, was reprint a lot of these energy creatures, just because they didn't have good IP. Not too many Aethertide whales in Fallout. But yeah, some sweet things, some old, I'm not sure if favorite is the right word, but things like Whirler Virtuoso, all too familiar with.
Love Whirler Virtuoso. It was a victim of other things happening at the time.
That may be the case.
Yeah.
Don't overlook Aether Geode Miner is one that really puts in a ton of work in the deck. It's actually really easy to flicker and recur in a lot of different ways, makes a ton of energy kind of innocuously, and it's definitely an engine, even though that one didn't see its time in Standard.
Yep. Yeah, no, it's definitely got some room to shine here. All right, next let's take a look at enchantments, instants, and sorceries all on one slide. Call out a couple headliners here. We've got Akroma's Will. We've got a Legion Loyalty with some new art there, and a few sweepers and removal spells, and then a bunch of good energy creators.
Yeah, just some kind of classic good stuff. Decks need removal spells and wanted some sweet splashy payoff at the top. Already called out, you need some sweepers, you need some card flow, just a mix.
Yeah. And then, so when you're looking at putting these in, are you mixing up like I need X number of instants, or are you more looking for the effects? How do you
I think you're usually looking for the effect that, I need spot removal, for instance.
Sure.
But, a lot of the strongest versions of those will be, instants. Like Swords to Plowshares is just best in class.
Right.
So it's what we'll often go to, and it just happens to be instant. Sometimes in the process, we'll definitely hit a point where we're realizing, oh, wow, we didn't give this deck very much instant speed interaction, huh?
Yeah.
I was really playing Solitaire the whole time. And we'll course correct, but for the most part, it's usually effect first.
Yep, absolutely. All right, and finally, well, almost finally, we have the lands. Anything you want to call out here among the land suite?
First time Aether Hub is getting a reprint
Yep.
in quite a while. Obviously something that'll make lots of energy decks tick. Might even see that one more now in Modern with some of the new cards. And then, yeah, just a mix. We've got some Pain lands. Castle Vantress is a good mana sink. Mystic Gate is a spicy one. Yeah, just...
Yeah, sweet lands. All right, and speaking of lands, we finally have the basic lands. These are the basic lands that you'll find in this deck. That's the art, yeah. All right, that covers the deck for us. We do have a little bit of time left, so if you have any questions about this deck specifically, we've got Reggie here for the remainder of the time. A couple things I will call out as you populate chat with questions. One, it's easier for me to find your question if you tag it at Magic. Two, there are 3 more decks coming, 2 of them tomorrow and then 1 on Thursday. You can find out exactly where by heading to the Where to Find Modern Horizons 3 preview article, which is on dailymtg.com. Also, if you were counting at home the cards in this deck, we didn't quite show off everything. There are some main set cards from Modern Horizons 3 in this deck. The full deck list will be published at the end of the stream on dailymtg.com. So you'll be able to see the full deck list there and check out everything going on there. So let's take a look at some of the questions. I'm going to ask this.
Sure.
You are not a lore expert, so you may or may not know it.
It's true.
But what plane is Kith from?
I do not know, actually.
All right. We can look into that. We'll find it out. Let's see. Will the cards be published into the card gallery after the stream or tomorrow like the normal schedule? I believe the answer is they will be published today after the stream. All right, next question for Reggie. Did you consider artifact lands in this deck, either the bridges or the originals?
We really didn't, just because the artifact theme in this deck is a lot more muted.
Yeah.
I think we maybe saw like 1 or 2 cards that can synergize with it, like Era of Innovation or something like that. But for the most part, we just felt like the artifact theme was not prominent here. So no, didn't think that we needed the artifact lands.
Okay. The question is just no planeswalkers in the deck, but were there ever planeswalkers considered for this deck at any point?
Yeah, there are some planeswalkers in the suite that I think you'll see in the other commander decks. It's tough. I love planeswalkers a lot myself, and I usually put too many in the commander decks that I build. But reality is they're pretty weak in commander. Just surviving a turn cycle, especially in a deck like this that is usually not leaving back as many blockers, is sometimes a tall order. Certainly they're fun, especially with proliferating, but I don't think any made a ton of sense, but could be sweet to add as upgrades.
Yep. Let's see. Question. So we haven't talked about it much, but there are, if we could put the product shots back up, there are two different versions of this deck. So there is a regular version, which is normal trappings of what you'd expect out of a commander deck, and then there's the collector deck, which comes in, and this answers the question in chat, Ripple Foil. The cards in the deck come in Ripple Foil. We showed off some Ripple Foil on stream last week. So if you'd like to, you can go back and watch last week's stream, and you'll see Mike Turian showing off some of the Ripple Foil. Otherwise, I don't have any today physically to show off, but we had them last week. And then next week, we are going to do the product opening stream. I will try to have some there as well, so you can get a look at the Ripple Foil. They're really cool. They look really good. So the collector decks are very cool. We don't have a digital mock-up. The digital mock-ups kind of show it, but really you have to see it in person. All right. Here's a question. Do you think this deck will integrate well with past iterations of energy? Seems like the vehicles are a bit out of theme.
I do. Yeah, I think there are only the two vehicles. There's the reprint Aether Sphere Harvester and the new Filigree Racer that we saw.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, we've already done a lot of the legwork in trying to incorporate old energy from Kaladesh and Aether Revolt.
Yep.
But I think that, yeah, there will be some sweet Fallout cards that will synergize nicely that I'm excited to put together, and obviously some main set juice from Modern Horizons 3. So I think that things will come together in a cool package.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's ask this reprint. So was there ever discussion about putting any of the cards from the Fallout decks in here with new art?
We considered it, but nothing ended up really passing muster, I would say. Part of that is just normal process. We usually try to err away from reprinting cards before we've even printed them in person, just because you're really guessing as far as, which card do we think is actually going to be really exciting and players are really going to love. Obviously we hope it's all of them, but it's just not the case.
Yeah.
So there were some that we had considered. I know the name is escaping me, but there's like a pretty clean blue-red counterspell that I really like that's in the Fallout deck, to the point of, I think we had considered in the Fallout team, oh, should we name this something really generic so that we could pick it up easily? But in the end, we just felt like we had enough already with the old set reprints that we got to use that Fallout didn't, that we didn't need to go to that well.
Yep. Did you ever consider creating ways to interact with energy, experience counters, or emblems?
Yes, and that is something that you should stay tuned for. That was something that we were keenly aware of, kind of trying to develop. If you don't know, we normally are testing and playing the commander decks kind of as a suite, sort of. We kind of call it like the biodome. And so playing the 4 decks against each other, that was something that immediately came up was, man, we need to be able to interact with this energy, because that was really the failing in standard. And so there are some tools in the other decks that will now exist and you can more broadly put into other commander decks that can interact with energy and other counters. So stay tuned.
All right. All right, we called these out earlier. They're pretty powerful cards, but the question is, why the Goldspan Dragon and Facebreaker for this deck? What was the design philosophy behind those?
They're just sweet, aggressive red creatures. Not every aggressive red creature scales well in Commander. Red kind of has a tough time in general in the format, just because so much of its identity is tied up into damage.
Yeah.
And turns out when you have to deal not 20 damage, but 120, things go worse.
Yeah.
So trying to find the ones that can scale nicely is, sometimes daunting. And, I don't think that this deck necessarily uses treasure exceptionally well, but it benefits from it in kind of having creatures that can create lingering value. Facebreaker can draw some cards. Goldspan Dragon makes just so much mana and is a really good evasive body. So they're just some of the best-in-class attackers that we felt like the deck could really benefit from.
All right. This is sort of a meta question, but how much playtesting is done on Commander precons?
A lot, yeah. We're usually playtesting at a point, I don't know, almost like once a week for, months of design. So quite a lot of reps. And then even past that point, we now have a casual play design team who work on and play test kind of the individual cards with more scrutiny. They also usually do some play tests of the biodome to also give opinions and insight onto the precon construction. And all that being said, the answer is a lot. Yeah, a lot of scrutiny, a lot of oversight. And so people have definitely played a good amount with these cards.
All right. What was the rationale to go with Jeskai as opposed to the classic Teamer energy constructed archetype?
It was kind of a macro decision. So when we're deciding on what to do for all 4 decks, we were kind of considering where we wanted to land on things. And so for people that don't know, there's a Jund deck, a 6-color Eldrazi deck, let's call it, this Jeskai deck, and a blue-green lands deck. And so we had thought about maybe we should deliver and try to do Teamer, but then we weren't in love with having 3 blue-green kind of archetypes and worried that it might kind of overshadow, especially the blue-green deck itself. So we ended up pulling back, and we certainly hear you. If people really are clamoring for Teamer energy, then it could be something that you'll see on the horizon. But Jeskai just ended up kind of making the most sense when we were kind of gridding things out, and it just ended up being the easiest to do in terms of incorporating in fun reprints, especially at high rarities too. Not too many exciting green rares with energy. Sorry, Aetherwind Basker fans.
Let's see. Is Satya wearing pajama pants? I don't know, but I'm sure they are comfortable. Hey, I don't even know if you can answer this question, but I'm going to ask it because it's a fun question that had actually never been asked before. So when you're talking about playing in the biodome, in your play tests, which deck won more?
It was pretty even spread. I feel like there were different points in the process where, some decks might have been struggling more and some decks were overperforming. But I've certainly witnessed lots of different wins. I'll say the Jund deck was really my baby.
Okay.
So clearly that's the best one and won the most because I was piloting it,
So that's actually a good question. Do you, when you're testing the biodome, are you always playing the same deck to be very familiar
Not
with
always.
it, or you switch it up?
You mix it up. I mean, I think I probably, for instance, Henry probably did play this Jeskai deck more than anybody, and I probably did play the Jund deck more, but you definitely swap things up as much as you can too to get better insight on other people's work and be able to give more constructive criticism.
All right. This isn't a question, but I'm going to read it out loud because it's very nice. Your guest is awesome. He's very knowledgeable.
Thank you.
Yeah. Next question. Have you considered at any point this deck with a color other than red? Red cards kind of look out of place.
That is something that we did not consider. Our options that we were weighing internally were definitely Teamer or Jeskai.
Yeah.
So I guess in theory it could be like a Bant energy deck. I really don't know. That would probably be something very different. Probably, really kind of like rampy and dirtily in how it assembles engines. There could be something cool there. So.
Yeah, could be. Red-blue was, I mean, when energy was introduced, it was in all colors, but I think it was primarily red-blue, and even that Teamer energy deck was like splashing green.
Right, and there were even some green-red energy shells, that were playing electrostatic pummeler and stuff. And so, I think just too many of the good old cards kind of associated energy with red kind of in our minds.
Yeah.
And so
Makes sense. If you see good results with energy, do you think we'll see more energy cards in the future?
we might, yeah. You know, we're always paying attention to, you know, player feedback and hearing how they enjoy the mechanics. Obviously, energy was something that we were skittish about bringing back in the first place, you know, after, let's call it mixed results the first go around. So, yeah, if we hear that, you know, we got the balance right, or, you know, these cards specifically for the commander format are really fun, then yeah, you could definitely expect to see more.
All right. Another question about the biodome. So in the biodome, do you play test where your players can make adjustments? I think this is asking, like, on the fly, do you change cards if something doesn't work, or
you know, I think this is discretionary, person to person, lead to lead. Yeah, you definitely see some amount of that. We're always trying to, you know, promote good play testing, trying to, you know, learn things. So one aspect of that is, you know, making sure that we're not getting, you know, mana screwed or something like that. We'll often kind of play around that and make note. But yeah, I've definitely seen that where we just like are playing with a card and like discover an infinite combo and realize, oh, yeah, that's not gonna fly. Let's patch that out right now. Activate only as a sorcery or something like that, and make a change that we need to make. I don't think I've seen just a card wholesale swapped out for another card in the middle of a playtest, but you know, I'm sure that that's happened too. So yeah, I mean, you do what you can to get good playtesting in.
Cool. All right, I'm actually going to read an answer. So we've got Shivam in chat. Shivam,
Awesome.
Yeah, on the Commander Advisory group. So the pajama question. So he clarified they're Lengha, Lengha. I may be mispronouncing that, but and he says further, as it happens, pajamas were brought over to the West from Indian culture, so they more or less are pajamas, but the style that we just wear regularly. So yeah, if you didn't catch that in chat, good insight. Let's see. Good question. Was there an energy card cut during the testing stages that you wish personally was not?
Energy card that got cut. Nothing's coming to my mind immediately, because a lot of them really just did end up making it in the final cut. I'm not sure if there was any like one that felt like it was like particularly problematic or over. So no real answer there. I'm gonna say probably not.
Okay. Here's kind of a big picture question about energy. How do you balance energy when designing a card? How does it add to the power of the card? And I think this is a good question because Magic has a very long history of turning the knobs on power toughness, mana cost,
No doubt.
certain abilities. Energy's relatively new, and we very famously missed by a little bit the first time around.
That's true.
So how has thinking evolved on tuning energy cards?
Yeah, it's trying to be careful and restrained, you know, making sure that you're evaluating cards kind of both from a fail case of what if I don't have very much energy at all? How embarrassing or, you know, strong is this card? And if I have near infinite energy, how outrageous is this card?
Yeah.
Especially because those are often going to be kind of some strong binaries in Commander especially, just because you're often more able to assemble kind of crazier engines than you are in constructed formats.
Yep.
But, you know, there's no real easy kind of one-shot answer, you know, for the modern cards and the Commander cards. It's not like, if I have an energy cost here, it costs 1.5 mana or something like that. It's really just case by case and a lot of iteration and scrutiny and, you know,
testing.
Yeah, exactly. So we hope we did a better job.
Let's see, I'm seeing a number of questions about when other decks will be revealed. So today's the first one. We've got 2 more tomorrow, and then we've got 1 more on Thursday. I do not know off the top of my head which deck is which day, but 2 tomorrow and then 1 on Thursday. And then, let's see, I saw another question that I thought was a good one.
I also have the Aetherborn and Construct.
Oh, we got some tokens. We can show off some tokens.
Sure.
Thanks, Producer Sean. Let's show off some of the tokens from the deck. There's the Aetherborn token. Oh, that's really cool. Actually, I've not seen that. That is a good-looking token.
No doubt.
And then 6 to 12 construct. Love it. Cool. There was a same question about cards being cut during testing, but for reprints.
You know, there were a couple of different iterations of this deck. One that was pretty goofy that had started kind of early on in the process.
Yep.
We weren't sure if it wanted to be an aggressive deck or not, and so it had actually started life as kind of being this energy deck and also a charge counter deck is kind of the sub-theme.
Okay.
Really kind of trying to lean into this proliferation and crazy engine building, and so there were some of the usual suspects that you would expect, like Core Tapper and things like that. It was kind of just outrageous. The deck was taking, you know, like 20-minute turns of, you know, looked like they were playing a Euro game over there, and we were just so pivoted away from that. So that wasn't, you know, necessarily a power level thing. It was just kind of a play
Fidgety.
style. Yeah, exactly. So we expect and encourage some amount of that, but you know, thought that the aggressive direction was a little better. Other reprints, I don't know. Nothing's coming to mind. This is always so challenging because we're working on these products, you know, a year and a half ago, and so trying to recall. But I can't think of any particular reprints that like felt like they were wildly out of sorts.
Okay. All right. Last question before we go. Let's see. We're gonna say you kind of talked about this a bit. But it's a good question, and I'm sure there are going to be a lot of people who have the Fallout Energy deck and are going to be looking at this one. So were this deck and the Fallout Energy deck designed to interact together at all?
You know, loosely. Like I said, I was on both design teams, and so I was providing a little bit of visibility to both on what we were working on. But we didn't do anything kind of very deliberate in terms of, you know, like, and this is a slam dunk combo with Madison Lee.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of just kind of, hopefully, nice emergent gameplay that comes from being able to play them together. I think that just getting a better density of energy will allow for some cool moments to happen. And I think that things will just play well together overall. So
Cool.
I hope so.
All right. Well, we're all about out of time here. I do see there are more questions in chat. I'm sorry we didn't get to them. Reggie is very knowledgeable, as that one commenter stated. But we've got to go. Next week, we are going to be back. We're going to be opening Modern Horizons 3 ahead of pre-release weekend so that you can get a sense of all the different products and what's in what and what the various treatments look like and all the cool stuff that's going to be coming out of PAX. It's one of my favorite shows, so we're gonna do that. We're gonna hang out, open some product, and talk about the collecting article. The rest of this week, we've still got more Modern Horizons 3 Commander deck previews coming. We've got 2 tomorrow and 1 on Thursday. For your list of all previews coming this week, head to dailymtg.com and you will find a Where to Find Modern Horizons 3 previews. That is pretty close to the exact name of the article, so you can also Google it if you need to. The deck we showed off today is going to be available with the full deck list and cards in the card image gallery at the conclusion of this stream, also on dailymtg.com, so please head there and check that out. Until next week, I've been Blake. Thank you, Reggie, for joining us.
Reggie. Yeah,
thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you next week.